Hi everyone, welcome to our community classroom discussion related to schools and school choice and all of the battles that are going on related to children and education. We're going to touch a little bit on some issues related to college students also, but we're going to start off talking about school choice for parents and children and also for educators. It's unclear why this battle has been going on because there are some very common sense options that should have been put on the table from the very beginning to alleviate a number of the concerns, a number of the battles. It's almost as if people are battling for battling's sake, and it's completely unnecessary. In fact, there are a number of options that would prove optimal, not only for the children, but for the educators and for the parents and the community. So before we get started with looking at these options, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to give you my professional opinion about this. So this isn't about our fun discussions about history or our analytic discussions about religion and science and all of that. We're going to be talking about children. We're going to be talking about psychology. And there's some legal issues intertwined up in here. We're not going to really touch on those as much, but we're going to talk about some of the psychological dynamics and some of the practical dynamics related to education in this particular situation. Now, some people are under the fantasy that things are going to return to whatever it is that they understand normal to be. And so let me disabuse you of that theory and that belief. Bar some unforeseen circumstances, things are not going to return to the state that you recall as normal. So there are a number of new things that are going on, and perhaps this is a time for you to do a new thing in this new day. So there are some options that are on the table. The readily available ones, of course, are traditional schooling. You put your children on the school bus, you take them to school, they go to school, they are educated there, or whatever goes on, and they come home. There are a number of restrictions that will be going along with that for many reasons. But there are some other options, and we're going to talk about how those other options might work out. One thing that should have been on the table from the very beginning, and this is this traditional flipped dynamic. One of our elders suggested the flipped school year idea, and it is actually a very good idea for those who are in cold climates, and it goes along with what we're going to talk about. And so, one of the things that the schools should have been considering from day one was outdoor education. Outdoor education alleviates all of the concerns about being too close, about wearing a mask, about the contagion dynamic, transmission dynamics. And so it takes care of a number of issues at one time. And so we're going to look at that a little bit more, but we're just going to quickly look at some of these options for you to consider here. So you've got traditional regular school year, then you've got traditional flipped, where perhaps in colder climates, the children would go to school when it's warm, and then they would have what would be known as their summer break as a winter break instead. And so they would be home in the winter time instead. And then you have the option of traditional homeschooling, where children are educated in the home with their parents and their siblings. This can also be extended to extended family members. And so you have clusters of family members that are being educated together. And of course, children don't have to be in the same grade in order to do this effectively. And there are lots of programs. I posted those uh, resources for you, some links, and you can go and look at some of those things to see what options there might be. There are a number of free online homeschool programs also, so you don't have to worry about cost in terms of that. You also have the option of the micro school. And remember, those emergency scholarships were made available for starting these micro schools and these pods and things like that. And so that would be for small groups of neighborhood children. And so you might have a neighbor who has a couple of children, you have a couple of children, you can get together and you can sort of trade off responsibilities. And then you can also have an educator come and help with the process. As a matter of fact, you can contract with some educators to help you put together a plan, some lesson plans, and getting resources. And so that's another option with the micro school dynamic. Then you can do something that involves sort of a mixture of homeschool and online school. There are some other creative configurations that you also might want to entertain. You can just sort of engage in some creative problem solving. For college students, I know this has become a dilemma. Definitely, some students might want to consider online classes. Now, clearly, online is not what a number of students want to do. However, life is about options, life is about choices. And so, this is an option that is out there. So the flexible online educational options. And also I want to tell you about some other options for earning college credit, and those include CLEP and Dante's. And this is where you study on your own and then you take the test. And if you get a certain score on the test, then you get college credit for that towards graduation. It's not very expensive. You can go online and look at the listing of courses that are available. It's pretty broad, actually. Quite a few options there. And so that will give you some flexibility in terms of some of the options. You can also do things like sabbatical and all sorts of independent studies and things like that. So just sort of broaden your horizons in terms of how you are understanding education. And think about how you can make this situation work in a way that is going to be in your best interest, whether you're talking academically, health-wise. Think about what's going to be in your best interest, considering the totality of the current situation and also going forward. And so I'm going to use this picture as a perfect example regarding the outdoor education, distance, air, eco-education option. This picture is presented with respect to this debate that's going on related to mask mandates and things like that for children. One of the things that has been popping up is that situations have been created that make it very difficult to maintain health for a number of people during these times. Now, people know basically what would probably be the healthiest configuration here, but as you see from the picture, that is not what is going on. And a part of this is sometimes people like to create problems. And so this is a creation right here of a problem that does not need to be. But what it does is it gives you a picture of this big problem. And then there's this big argument about, the mask. Actually, what could be taking place here is the children don't need to be going into the building. It's hot outside. For the most part, around the world, it's warm right now. And the children could be outside. They don't have to be sitting under each other. They don't have to be sitting, 2, 3, 4 feet away from each other. They can be outside if their health permits. They could be outside sitting on the sit-upons. They could have chairs. They could sit on the ground. Whatever works for them. And there are so many outdoor environments that are available, particularly in warm climates. And there's some battles going on in some climates where they've got beaches, they've got all sorts of parks, and all of these rivers and mountain ranges, all sorts of things that are available in addition to the playground and the football field and the areas around the schools. All of these things are open, but for some strange reason, You don't hear a lot of teachers advocating for this. You don't hear administrators advocating for this. What you hear is an advocation of arguing about things that are unnecessary. And so that's one thing to consider. So if you're in a place where they are battling about the mask for the children, you might want to consider asking the school district to shift those classes to outside, and then that's problem solved. But sometimes what's going on, there's a battle, it's a power issue that's going on, and this is just you know, this is just the beginning of the power issues around all of this. And so you might want to consider how you can get rid of some of the power issues right now. Now, I am a big advocate for homeschooling when done appropriately. And so I think that that is a very good space for children to learn, particularly if you have siblings or you have other homeschoolers in the neighborhood that you can socialize with. This is a great option. And given the situation that we are in right now, when homeschooling is possible, homeschooling is going to be the best option or some variation thereof, sort of like the micro schools and the extended family member homeschools. Those sorts of things are going to be the best option for now. There are a lot of things that are up in the air right now. And again, many people are thinking that things are going to go back to whatever it is they think normal looks like, but it's not going in that direction anytime soon. And so I don't want to even encourage you to think in that way. And so you have to think about what it is that you actually have some control over. Now, of course, some parents are not able to homeschool for a number of reasons. They might be working, they might not be available for this. But there are some other options that you might want to consider in terms of being flexible with neighbors and family members and friends. And so you are encouraged to think about that. The benefit, of course, with the outdoor education is you're going to get that fresh air. They are going to be in nature. This is very important. And this will also address some of the mental health issues that have been going on with the children. They probably need to be outside. They need to be disconnected from technology for a little bit. And they need to be out in nature as much as possible. And you'll also find that in terms of cold, so some people might feel like, when it gets cold, the children are not going to want to be outside, but you would be amazed. Many children actually would like to be outside when it's cold. And so you could come up with all sorts of creative activities, educational activities related to being outside. You can use the outside for science, you can use it for social studies, you can use it for English, you can use it for reading, spelling, you can definitely use it for physical education. So personal growth, you can do journaling outside with the children, nature walks. There are all sorts of things that you can do with the children outside that would be beneficial. And that when you're comparing and contrasting with respect to indoor education, this is going to far surpass anything that is going on in those little four walls that are all smushed in there together. So it's definitely something to think about, even at the level of college. You will find that many students prefer to be outside. So if they are given the option of sitting around a classroom, they will often prefer to be outside. And you can be creative about how that happens also. So students, don't hesitate to ask your educators, your teachers, to consider doing things outside for the benefit of everyone when possible. As we wrap this up, I want to touch on one additional issue. So in addition to reducing all of these amelioration battles, what should be done, what shouldn't be done, and then having all of these power struggles, um, in addition to reducing some of that, outdoor education, being able to reduce that, and homeschooling definitely being able to reduce that, reduces the battle down to zero. The other issue is that outside schooling also may address some disability issues. And so you have these battles going on about these masks for children. Masks are not optimal for children. They're not optimal for anyone. And I'm speaking as a clinician who's worked in hospitals before. And they are great for reducing transmission, regardless of what people are saying. They actually are great for that. They are rarely used, however, but when they are used, they do seem to be quite beneficial. That's my experience with them. The other thing, though, is that there is some difficulty with breathing with these things. And so it's not optimal for children to actually be wearing them, even if they don't have any disabilities, because you're talking about oxygen and getting oxygen to the brain and brain cells and all of that. And so it is optimal for them not to have them. And that is why the outdoor education piece is so important, or homeschooling, where they are, in their own little home cluster. But in the school situation, this addresses that need for some children to not have them. And then this gives the parents the choice. It also, if the students are needing to feel safe, they can have sufficient distance while they are outside, and so they don't have to worry about being in sort of that zone of transmission, but they can still see their peers' faces. They can still engage them at a slight distance. The teacher doesn't have to worry about being surrounded by a number of children. If the teacher is feeling uncomfortable, they can all be outside in the open and free, without all of this conflict. And then it reduces the conflict around children who may have disabilities and may not be able to wear these, and you're not inconveniencing the parents with having to go these extra miles to address this issue, or having the child singled out and things like that. And so again, the outdoor education option is ideal if you are going to have your children in the traditional school environment, and it's definitely something that needs to be brought up with the educators. It needs to be brought up with these school boards. And if you are at a private school, you can bring it up to them. Again, however, the best option in many instances, in this particular situation that we are dealing with right now, is homeschooling. Getting the resources, the tangible resources together to educate the children at home until such a time as that might continue or be unnecessary. Okay, so this is some food for thought. If you have some questions, I'm more than happy to answer those questions. And hopefully this is helpful and give you some things to think about. And if you're an educator out there, you really need to be thinking about this, because there's no reason why, as educators, that we would not be considering all of the flexible options that could be put on the table for the children. Okay, remember, knowledge is power. Take care. See you soon.